Israeli forces opened fire on Thursday at a crowd gathered near a convoy of aid trucks in Gaza City. What unfolded were chaotic scenes in which scores were killed and hundreds injured. Although officials from both sides offered differing accounts of what exactly happened, the deaths of so many people who were surrounding a food convoy in a part of Gaza where starvation is rampant, it was reflective in many ways of the desperation and the spiraling lawlessness. As news kept trickling in of what Gazans called a massacre, it was threatening to derail ongoing ceasefire talks. The health ministry in Gaza said in a statement that Israeli forces had killed more than 100 people and had injured 700 others as they were waiting for food from the convoy. Now, this latest bloodshed comes even as Gaza's health officials are saying that the death toll from 5 months of this war has gone upwards of 30,000. That is a grim milestone which will only intensify pressure on Israel to end its military campaign. An Israeli military spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, has said that Israeli soldiers fired warning shots in the air, after which they fired only in the face of danger when the mob moved in a manner which endangered the security forces. People in Gaza, particularly those in the northern part of Gaza, have become increasingly desperate for food. The United Nations, other relief agencies have all been struggling to deliver supplies amid the ongoing hostilities. The Israeli military's refusal to facilitate any kind of aid delivery has also contributed to the breakdown of law and order inside Gaza. In fact, the health ministry in Gaza said on Thursday that as many as 700,000 people in the northern part of the Strip were simply suffering from starvation. The Kamal Adwan hospital in Gaza City received the bodies of at least a dozen gunshot victims, and more than 100 people with gunshot wounds were brought there for treatment. The Gazan health ministry says that the death toll was expected to go upwards as wounded Palestinians also arrived at the Al-Shifa hospital, which notoriously the Israeli side has accused of being a hideout for Hamas. Medical workers there reportedly were simply unable to deal with the volume of patients and injuries that were coming in. There's also an acute shortage of staff and medical supplies. According to one Israeli military official, about 30-odd trucks which were carrying humanitarian aid had traveled from the Kerem Shalom crossing, that's between southern Israel and Gaza, along what is a coastal road all the way into northern Gaza Strip. As the trucks were very close to Gaza City, this was about 4:45 in the morning, thousands of people surrounded these food aid trucks in an attempt to try and seize the supplies there. This led to a stampede, and in that stampede, dozens of people were injured or killed. Some were run over by these aid trucks as the drivers simply sought to escape from this situation. These details were offered by an Israeli official who briefed reporters on the condition of anonymity because this is a security matter which is still under investigation. Several hundred yards south of that, at the tail end of this convoy, about 30 vehicles were part of this convoy, there were dozens of civilians who had rushed onto those trucks, which then approached Israeli troops and a tank which was securing the road. When this happened, the security personnel who were on the tank and other armored personnel carriers, they were forced to open fire on the civilians who were rushing to these food trucks. The Israeli military released a drone video, some of which seems like it is edited, but that video shows hundreds of people crowding around and then climbing on top of these aid trucks. This was happening along the Al-Rashid road, which is the main highway that connects Gaza to the southern part of the Strip. At one point in this footage, you can see people start running. Some are crawling behind walls. Some also appear to be taking cover for what is clearly fire that's been heard, the sound of gunfire that's been heard around the video. Like I said, some parts of it seem like edited, but after some of those edited portions, you can see at least a dozen people who are lying flat on the ground. We don't know, and you can't say from the footage whether these people are injured or they're dead, but they're simply lying flat on the ground. And because of the panic, people there are struck by these aid trucks because they're not moving out of the road. They're not moving out of the way. 2 Israeli military vehicles are also visible in this video footage.
My understanding this far, and this is unfolding as I say and developing, my understanding thus far is that humanitarian aid vehicles entered the Gaza Strip and were overwhelmed by people attempting to essentially loot, to take that aid from those aid trucks.
Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has said that while he was still learning the details of what had happened, he believed that the bloodshed would complicate the ongoing negotiations which are aimed at reaching a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Biden had previously said that he's hopeful by as early as next Monday there will be a temporary truce in the Gaza Strip.
We're checking that out right now. There's two competing versions of what happened. I don't have an answer yet.
Are you worried about complications, negotiations?
I know it.
Gaza has been under an almost complete, total siege since the Hamas attacks that happened on the 7th of October in Israel, in which about 1,200 Israelis were killed. Hamas also took away more than 250 people from Israel back into Gaza as hostages. Over 100 of them are still in Hamas custody. It was unclear who was overseeing the current convoys, which was the scene of this unfortunate shooting. Philippe Lazzarini, who is the head of the main UN aid group which serves Palestinians, said that no UN agency was involved in this. The Israeli military said that the aid was being distributed by private contractors, but who those contractors are, their identities have not been revealed. Now, ever since this war began, lawlessness has been rampant in many parts of both northern as well as southern Gaza. There is no authority who's emerged to take charge of public order after Israel ousted Hamas from many of these areas. The World Food Programme, for example, last week said that it has paused all food deliveries into northern Gaza because there's a big challenge of safely delivering food aid in northern Gaza. UNRWA, which is the main United Nations relief works agency whose funding incidentally has been suspended because several donor countries suspect that some of these members of UNRWA, at least a dozen of these employees of UNRWA, were accused of aiding and abetting the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. The UN has launched an investigation into that, and they are hoping that once that investigation makes clear the role of these employees, then UNRWA funding can be restarted. UNRWA has said that they were last able to deliver food aid to northern Gaza over a month ago. Now, in recent weeks, large crowds of Gazans have also repeatedly rushed to food aid convoys. Some of them have managed to seize the supplies. Occasionally, you can even see people being armed as they storm these food trucks. Some of the Gazan police officers have simply refused to guard these convoys. Their big fear is because of their affiliation with Hamas, that makes them easy targets for Israeli troops. In fact, a Hamas official, Izzat al-Rishq, blamed Israel for these deaths. He said that Hamas would not allow the negotiations which are aimed at stopping this war to be used as some kind of a cover for the continued crimes against the Gazan people. The United Nations estimates over 100,000 Palestinians have been killed, injured, or missing since this war began. There is pressure on Israel to declare a limited 6-week ceasefire in exchange for hostages at the start of the holy month of Ramadan, which begins in early March. But the shootout at this food aid convoy makes that timeline looks far less realistic, something that's been acknowledged both by US President Joe Biden and a little more grudgingly so by Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of Israel.